Hey, happy Monday, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather. Hope you all had a great weekend. It was definitely a volatile one here in the south and east. And we also have some tropical development to talk about here in the Atlantic. A couple of rare potential storms coming up for this week. Let me share my screen with you and show you what we're looking at. The first one is likely to develop here in the next 24 hours into a depression and storm. That one would get the name Brett. There are two potential tracks with that. Both take it very close to the islands. Then after that, we're going to have to watch with some models taking it across the Caribbean and maybe as a weaker system, others taking it to the right and turning it up to the east of Bermuda, maybe even threatening Atlantic Canada here in about a couple of weeks or now from now as a stronger storm. And behind it, another disturbance forming, which may eventually become either a depression or Cindy, our next tropical storm. These are both very rare. We typically do not see this kind of a development in the middle of the Atlantic until the end of July or August. So we are running hot here and running way ahead of schedule. And if you've been watching my videos, this should not be a surprise to you, as I did talk about things picking up rather quickly here for the early part of the tropical season. Now, first, let's talk about the severe weather. We did have a damaging tornado last night around Lewin, Mississippi, towards Paulding, potentially an EF3, according to this debris ball. There were some injuries, a lot of structural damage. My thoughts and prayers are with all these folks in Mississippi, just a very difficult situation. And it was a crazy weekend for severe weather. Multiple complexes of storms moved through Oklahoma. We did have tornado-like damage over the Tulsa area, strong winds around Oklahoma City, hail and tornadoes over the Panhandle, and those storms continued into Arkansas and the Arklatex, where many are still without power, and yet heat indices during the day have been getting well over 100 to maybe 115. Can you imagine even that kind of heat and humidity with no electricity? It's just been a very extreme setup here for many of us here in the South. And then yesterday, we continued to have damage reported in multiple storm complexes that moved across the Arklatex, across Arkansas, across Mississippi, Alabama, into western Florida. And here's where the strong tornado was reported last night, north of Bay Springs and around Antioch and those areas. Major structural damage on County Road 16 here from the Jackson office. So multiple watches and warnings were in effect. And currently on the map, we still have a tornado watch in effect here for a couple more hours. This is until 8 a.m. Central Time. However, we do have severe weather out ahead of it moving through southeastern Alabama. And we do have the threat for hail and intense winds across this area. These storms south of Jackson are going to move towards Hattiesburg here in the next hour or two. And then we're going to have to again watch for things across southern Alabama into western Florida. Just an insane stretch of weather that we've had here. I believe I saw in Mississippi at least a slight risk for 9 straight or maybe even 10 straight days. Farther off to the east, probably not a lot of severe weather, but a lot of rain coming to southwest Georgia, where we've had some flash flooding. The Atlanta area on over to Athens, dealing with very heavy rain, lots of lightning. Certainly the threat for some urban flooding across these areas along the I-20 corridor. And over the next couple of days, we're going to see the weather pattern stay active, but we're going to see less extremes when it comes to wind, hail, and tornadoes. What's going to happen is we're going to have an upper low that's going to slow things down and bring us a more typical summer pattern with lots of moisture in place. So now the threat's going to shift from extreme severe weather to potentially extreme amounts of rainfall across this region and here. So definitely something we're going to be watching here over the next couple of days. Here is the forecast from the Storm Prediction Center. A slight risk of severe weather from Baton Rouge and New Orleans on across the eastern Gulf states, right on to about Gainesville, Florida, Jacksonville, Savannah, Georgia, all the way up to Aiken and Augusta are under the slight risk here. And there is a 2% risk for tornadoes off and on throughout the day today from Louisiana into central and southern parts of Georgia. A bigger area that could have some wind damage all the way up into the western Carolinas, down to southeast Florida, and across central Texas. We also have another system that'll affect the Dakotas and Montana with heavy rain and severe weather, and a threat for large hail over southeastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi later today. I'm going to show that area to you guys as well. So yet another crazy day of severe weather expected. Tomorrow, we have 2 areas to focus on, one across the Gulf states, the other across the central and northern plains. I do think there will be severe weather, maybe even an enhanced risk area somewhere here in Louisiana and Mississippi. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Certainly a tornado threat from Alexandria to New Orleans and Gulfport and Biloxi, a 15% severe wind threat here, and severe winds are possible in any storm across Florida, Georgia, and Alabama as well, and a 5% risk of hail. But the good news for central and northern Mississippi is that most of this is finally lifting away to your, or pushing away to your south and east. So we're not going to see as much around the Delta region, around Jackson and Meridian and northern and central Alabama as we have had over the last several days. But it's still going to be pretty active here nonetheless. As we get to Wednesday, I do think there will end up being a marginal risk in here. There will be enough heating. There'll be an upper level low. It'll be unstable. But the winds aloft are going to be weaker. So the strong flow aloft that is driving these storm complexes is going to gradually relax. And that's going to set up just a very slow moving kind of stagnant pattern with lots of moisture, lots of potential rainfall, lots of clouds bubbling up. So not the prettiest of patterns here over the next couple of days. We'll keep an eye on the plains here from Oklahoma on up into Nebraska and eastern Wyoming, maybe even into South Dakota here by Wednesday. So it's still going to be active, but this is a more typical pattern for what you would see over the summer. And you can see here in the south and east, stagnant low pressure system. This is Wednesday into Thursday. It's not moving much. We will see moisture slowly spreading northward, hopefully into the Ohio Valley where we need it, but unfortunately into the mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania, and the Northeast in time for next weekend. So just a very slow-moving storm, lots of moisture coming up the spine of the Appalachians, very heavy rain potential across Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, southwestern Virginia, eastern Tennessee, just a very unsettled weather pattern. There could be some heavy rain as well into West Virginia, western Maryland here as we get into Thursday and Friday of next week. So my next videos will focus more on some of that flood threat. But the good news here is that if you look at the upper air chart, this is the GFS, you can see there are some faster winds aloft coming through on the backside of this upper low, a disturbance that comes down through Mississippi and Louisiana tomorrow. Once that moves through, though, we don't see that kind of strong upper level flow again the rest of the week. We have a cutoff low that could spawn some heavier storms, but we don't see just quickly racing complexes of storms that are dropping southward. So good news there. It seems like the main flow is going to lift up from California up into central Canada, and we'll see a big ridge of high pressure in between, which could lead to more lightning strikes and more wildfires here in central and eastern Canada. Oh, by the way, and that could affect us here in the Northeast here next week. But the pattern changes here. We finally get rid of the very active storm track over the south. We don't see lines of fast moving winds over the southern U.S. anymore. Now we see a slow moving upper low, which you guys can see here. And that is going to very slowly lift up into the Northeast here over the weekend. And once again, we have another trough in the east next week when we could have some more active weather in this region as well. So stay tuned on that. Let's take a look at the HRRR model so you can see the shorter term as far as rain and storms over the next couple of days. And fortunately, we're going to see more quiet weather here today over Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. But there could be storms that do pop up here later on this evening and overnight across East Texas and western Louisiana. And tomorrow, we could have some pretty nasty storms over Louisiana and Mississippi as we get to the late morning and afternoon hours. After that moves through, though, should be a little bit quieter, fortunately, for tomorrow night into Wednesday. I'm going to zoom in and show you all Louisiana and Mississippi here. You can see today we are going to have some scattered showers and storms. As we get towards the evening, some of those could have some pretty big hail, anywhere from around Baton Rouge and New Orleans on eastward along the Mississippi Gulf Coast. This particular model run has most of it staying east and northeast of New Orleans here tonight. But tomorrow you'll see additional storms that are going to move south and eastward across northwestern Louisiana here early in the day tomorrow. They'll continue moving southeastward towards Lafayette and the Acadiana region here, right to the Atchafalaya Bay here tomorrow morning. And then additional storms could be very heavy with intense winds, intense hail, maybe even a tornado or two here tomorrow around the midday into the early afternoon hours. And then just some scattered showers and storms around for tomorrow night. The rest of the Southeast is going to be very busy here. I did show you the radar with Alabama, Florida, and Georgia getting hit here this morning. We're going to continue to see waves of showers and storms moving across the same region. This includes the Florida Peninsula, maybe some severe weather tonight in northern and central Florida. And then tomorrow we'll see additional showers and storms over South Florida. And then you can see our upper low is going to just lead to random showers and storms that are slow moving. Some of them could be strong near the coast, but very heavy rainfall is going to be the bigger threat across really about 5 states here. Well, far eastern Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, eastern Tennessee. And that weather pattern is going to stay very unsettled here, especially in the Carolinas and on northward here. You can see this is the relative helicity, upper level helicity, updraft helicity, I should say. Sorry, early in the day here, but you can see the area that gets hit here in the next 24 hours. Pretty much Alabama, southwestern Georgia, northern Florida with intense storms. You also see the area dropping down through Louisiana that we're going to be keeping an eye on for you as well. We'll zoom into Florida because that's where I think things are going to be most active over the next couple of days. First complex moves south and east. It's going to be a stormy afternoon and evening for many of us here in Florida. Another wave comes through tonight, and then weekends, hopefully by the time it gets to Tampa Bay early in the day tomorrow. And then we see just a few scattered showers and storms over the northern part of the state. We're watching these storms that are moving through Alabama this morning. They are going to shift south and east of this area, but still we could have heavy rain over southeast Alabama here through the day today. We are going to see additional showers and storms that pop up with the heating of the day here tomorrow as our upper low develops. It's not going to be all over Mississippi, but eastern Alabama, western Georgia could see some pretty intense showers and storms. I don't think we're looking at a tornado outbreak, though, at this point. Where we are going to see a lot of wetness is going to be across Georgia here the next couple of days, and even southeastern Tennessee around Chattanooga. You can see we're going to have some stronger showers and storms around Augusta, Savannah, maybe over to Walterboro here in South Carolina, and these will expand northeastward through central and eastern parts of North Carolina late in the day today into the evening. Behind it, more showers and storms around Atlanta. These are going to probably fizzle later on this evening. You'll see very heavy rain across upstate South Carolina into the mountains of North Carolina, and continued showers and storms overnight tonight. And we'll see additional heavy amounts of storms here tomorrow. You can see things fire up with the heating of the day and continue into the evening. They're kind of diurnal, so the afternoon and evening is kind of our best shot of severe weather and heavy rainfall. And then later in the night, we just have some leftover showers and storms. As you can see, but there could still be very heavy rain tomorrow night. I-20 from Atlanta to Augusta and even to Columbia looks like it's going to get smacked pretty hard here with some heavy amounts of rainfall over the next couple of days. Looking farther to the north and east, where I am in Raleigh, we are definitely welcoming some rain, but I think we're going to get quite a bit of it here. Lots of rain moving into the central part of North Carolina, southern and south central Virginia here late in the day today. And it's going to get unsettled here tonight very quickly from Asheville on over to Greensboro and then up 85 towards Petersburg and to the west of Richmond around Charlottesville and Louisa County here in Virginia. We're going to see some heavy showers and storms tonight. West Virginia is also going to see some rain. We certainly could use some of it here. I don't think we'll see a lot of severe weather, but certainly some downpours. And tomorrow looks like pretty much a washout for the I-40 corridor from Greensboro and Statesville on down to Raleigh and then south and east towards Wilmington. Just very heavy rounds of rain expected here. We could see rainfall rates over 2 inches per hour. So if you need to get your gutters cleaned, today's the day to get them done. Tomorrow things are going to get pretty wet here pretty quickly. And it'll continue that way through the rest of the week. You can see this is a blend of the models. You can see where all the wet weather is going to be here over the next 7 days. You can see piling up over the southeast with amounts over 6 inches in many of these places from Florida up into Virginia. Heavy rain as well in the upper Midwest. The areas that really need it, though, are going to lose out here. Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Michigan, Missouri. We could certainly use some rain here in the parts of the upper Midwest and down into the Missouri Valley, but we're not really seeing it here. Next week, I do think we are going to see some more relief coming, but it's not everybody that gets it. You can see the same places that are wet continue to get wet. That's the Dakotas and Montana, and then, of course, the eastern seaboard here for next week. Here's a look at total rainfall over the southeast for the rest of the month of June. We're going to see amounts that may get well over a foot here when you get up to like Travelers Rest and Pisgah Forest. And in some of these areas south and east of Brevard are likely to get smacked hard with maybe a foot or more of rain. So very heavy amounts. Parts of Florida could see well over 6 inches. Southeast Alabama, southwest Georgia, even Atlanta may pick up about 4 inches of rain. New Orleans could get about 4 inches. Charleston, 4 inches. Wilmington, 4. Midlands are going to get over 6 inches of rain. So a very wet pattern coming here. Farther north, it's going to get pretty wet as well across Kentucky, eastern and central Tennessee, southern and central West Virginia. And then eventually you see that moisture spreads northeastward here for next weekend. Pennsylvania, New York into western New England are going to see significant amounts of rain. And through the end of the month, Parts of Virginia could pick up over a foot of rain. Parts of West Virginia could get 6 inches. Parts of PA, the Poconos up into Western Mass could get over 4 inches of rain. Just a very wet pattern coming up. And we see that as well into the Northeast, where most of our heavy rain is going to come this weekend into the first part of next week, where we may have amounts that get well over 3 inches, maybe even up to 6 inches of rain. And this is just a blend of the models that could certainly change. All right, so you saw my graphic. The tropics is what we're going to focus the rest of the video on. We're in an El Nino. Things are pretty stable at this point, a moderate El Nino. We've seen cooler than average waters off the eastern seaboard due to the cool start to the summer, but the rest of the Atlantic is ripping hot from the southern Gulf straight through the main development region and up to the Canary Current, running well above average, maybe 3 degrees or more Celsius above average. And that's contributing to our very active start to the Atlantic hurricane season in areas where it just doesn't get busy at all until we get later into July. But we've got 2 potential systems here now. The first one is AL92. That one, according to the Hurricane Center, is likely going to be a tropical depression or storm here at some point today. I think it'll be a storm by tonight, and Brett is the next name on the list. That's going to move west-northwestward and maybe get close to the islands here later this week. There's another system behind it that's going to take a little more time to develop, but maybe here by the middle of the week we have a depression or even a storm towards the second part of the week. The next name on the list would be Cindy, assuming we get Brett, which I think we will. This is our circulation, AL92. You can see it's got a good mid-level circulation. It's tough, though, to see if there's a low-level circulation. But nonetheless, it is producing tropical storm force winds. We just don't know yet if they're right on the ground and if everything is circulating around the center. So I expect with more satellite imagery today, we're likely going to see a tropical storm. This system is growing quickly. It's got a favorable environment. The question mark is going to be how quickly does it develop? And that's going to dictate where the storm ends up going. If it takes a little bit longer to organize, maybe get some wind shear, it's going to take a more southerly track through the middle of the Caribbean islands here, the Leeward Islands, even the northern Windward Islands, and then continue into the eastern Caribbean. If it takes that track, more than likely it's going to take a longer time to develop, and it may even weaken when it gets into the central Caribbean. However, some of our models still show that it is going to strengthen more steadily here for the second half of this week, and because it'll do that, a trough will pick it up and pull the storm track east of the islands and up towards and to the east of Bermuda. And that is certainly a possibility as well. You can see 2 camps here, a weaker camp where you see these duller colors, except for one of these ensemble members taking it through the eastern Caribbean. Then the stronger camp takes it nearer to the east of the islands and pushes it east of Antigua, of the Virgin Islands. And then we're watching it in Bermuda, probably coming by to your east as a stronger system. The ensembles from the European, the GEPS, show kind of the same thing, either a weaker system that comes into the Western Caribbean, maybe impacts Cuba, maybe even Florida here in about 10 or 11 days as a weaker system, or a stronger system which maybe comes by near the islands or to the east of the islands and turns northeast. And until the storm develops, we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's kind of 2 camps at this point. You can see that on our intensity forecast. A lot of models make this a tropical storm here today. After that, a lot of uncertainty. Some of the models make it a hurricane by Wednesday or Thursday. Others keep it weaker. Maybe it gets a category 1, maybe not. Again, way too soon to make any kind of calls on that as we still have a developing system. But you can see definitely a healthy circulation here on the water vapor. And behind it, here's the next disturbance. And there's another one getting ready to come off of Africa. So really 3 disturbances. You can see, though, let me annotate this for you guys here. You can see that very low wind shear. There's an upper level high right here that is driving things around, and that is circulating here. What's going to happen is this trough that's right here, this low pressure trough, is going to move east-southeastward. If this system stays weak enough, it is not going to feel the tug of that trough and continue on a more westerly track. However, if it strengthens, when it gets to about here, this trough is going to start to turn it. As the upper level winds that are 30, 40,000 feet are going to dictate the track of it. And it's going to act as a magnet and turn it up this direction and here. But if the system doesn't get strong quickly enough, it's going to miss that connection. So that's what I wanted to show you guys here. The system behind it, by the way, looks like it's going to follow in the path, take a little bit longer to develop, and eventually it will get picked up by the trough here. So anyway, I apologize if those marker points that I made weren't very easy to see, but anyway, you kind of get the feel here for, here's our first system. This will likely be Brett. Here's our next one, which could be Cindy. or at least the next tropical depression. And then there's another wave getting ready to come off of the African coast as well. So this is what you would see in August, but it is June. Just a very unique setup here. Here's a look at the GFS model, which has backed off a little bit on how quickly it's strengthening our system. In fact, the latest GFS brings it pretty close to the islands, but does turn it up to the north. The system behind it, which would be Cindy, it does have recurving here and actually kind of maybe even trying to get swallowed up by this circulation. But you can see the GFS continues at hard right. What could be Cindy is basically dying here this time next week. They actually are kind of circulating around each other. And it does have a hurricane, but it's got it well out to sea. Now, the interesting thing here, I've seen on the last couple of models, if you're in eastern Canada, you've got a high pressure block here that will eventually break down. If you're in Nova Scotia or Newfoundland, you may want to keep an eye on this system here if it does make that right turn. By the way, the GFS has a rapidly intensifying storm on the Pacific side of things, but notice nothing in the Gulf to really be concerned with. So at least we got that going for us, right? Here's the upper level pattern on the GFS. You can see the trough that jumps down here and picks up our system. You can see it just draws it in like a magnet. Here's the upper level low. Here's Brett. Here's potential Cindy right behind it. And you can see it draws them both towards it and then kind of dances things around. And where our upper level low goes here on the east coast of the U.S. next week will dictate where this could end up going. However, the GFS is kind of on an island of its own. The European does not strengthen Brett nearly as quickly and keeps it on the more southerly track. And you can see here Thursday night it's moving through the islands, and Friday it's in the Caribbean and then struggling at that point. And then here's Cindy, potential Cindy, right behind it going just north and east of the islands. So again, the models still don't quite understand what's happening. That the Navy model, which I never put a lot of stock in, is kind of in between the two. It's got a hurricane moving through the Caribbean and then weakening and hitting Hispaniola. Again, maybe, maybe not. The Icon, the German model, shows a weaker system moving down through the islands here Thursday evening. Here's Cindy behind it, which it actually develops a little bit better here, but keeps as a tropical storm or even a depression. So again, still some uncertainty on that. And then I like to look at the hurricane models, the HWRF, which continues to develop our first system, Brett, into a hurricane here by Wednesday, and continues it to the west-northwest. You can see it's starting to pull it away from the islands, and then behind it is Cindy. You can see this actually has a strong Category 3 hurricane, but it's already starting to make a turn. As you can see here on the last couple of slides, it's making a turn east of the islands. Here's Cindy behind it as a tropical storm. And then here is the HAFS model, which does develop this into a hurricane as well here Wednesday night, and continues to make that same kind of trajectory where it makes a right turn. The models don't go out any further, but you can see they're all turning this and kind of tugging it away from the islands. And that is probably our best case scenario in the US. But if you're in Eastern Canada, you definitely want to keep an eye on this because the end game is very uncertain at this point. The European shows strong chance that we have a tropical depression. Overall models have most of them now have it going through the Caribbean rather than turning away. You can see tropical storm probabilities. It does not strengthen enough into a hurricane. None of the ensemble members show it as a hurricane, despite what the GFS and the tropical models show us. And you can see here our accumulated maximum wind gusts from the control takes us through the islands with gusts over 50 miles per hour here Thursday evening, and then continues. And then this is potential Cindy, by the way, as a tropical storm. I'll show you the Caribbean, and you guys can see as the system moves to about Hispaniola, you can see the winds die off very quickly here. It hits the graveyard is what we call it here next Sunday. And then no real threat coming to the Gulf at that point. We will have a lot of moisture, though. You can see all this rain coming through the Caribbean. This is potential Cindy. And then obviously we've got our East Coast trough that's going to bring well above average rain over the next 15 days. More coming on these two potential tropical systems. We'll talk more about potential severe weather and flooding in the southeast coming up. I thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. If you could subscribe, I really would appreciate that. As always, I give all the glory to God who's called me to do this. I love glorifying God. I want you all to know why I do what I do. It's not for my own gain. It's because God has called me to do this. It's to save lives. It's to prepare folks. And it's to share my faith because it's very important to me. In my church yesterday, I watched a young man choose to accept Christ and be baptized in water. And it was just an amazing feeling seeing somebody else who has joined our kingdom. If you're not a believer, this is not, of course, any kind of judgment on you. But to me, just seeing somebody else who's given their life to Christ means so much to me because Christ was given to us and sacrificed so that we could be saved. 2 Corinthians 5, um, 16 and 17, or 17 and 18. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. And all things are of God, who hath reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ, and hath given us to the ministry of reconciliation. Old things have passed away. All things have become new in Christ. You are a new creation when you put on Christ, when you accept him as your personal savior. And I love that because for 30 years of my life, I was not a Christian. I was an A double hockey sticks hole, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to say the word, but I was very selfish, very much, I don't even say narcissistic, but I was struggling. And finally, the door opened for me to accept Christ. And I was able to kind of take that baggage, all that weight on my shoulders, and just throw it aside and accept Christ and to grow as a Christian person and to see exactly what God has for me in my future. And as a result, I've become a brand new person, somebody who I very much am loving that I'm growing, but just more, my love affair with God continues to grow. And I am able to continue to talk to God and thank him for every day because every day is a blessing. Happy to pray for you all for whatever situations you're going through. Or if you're struggling to make the decision to accept Christ as the gift that's been given to you, I want to pray for you as well. And if you could pray for me, I very much would appreciate that. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful Monday and look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a great day. See ya.